October 24th, 1944, Philippine Sea. Rear. Admiral Jesse Oldendorf, 57, from Riverside, California, studied the radar screen aboard battleship West Virginia. Green dots moved north through Surigao Strait, Japanese warships, the same kind that had devastated Pearl Harbor 3 years earlier. Oldendorf's hands were steady now, but his mind raced back to December 7, 1941. West Virginia had been his ship then too, sunk in the harbor mud with 106 men trapped inside. He'd spent 3 years rebuilding this fleet, training crews, perfecting a strategy. Tonight, that strategy would face its ultimate test. Could they pull off what no navy had attempted in modern warfare? What Oldendorf didn't know, within 4 hours, he would command the last battleship-versus-battleship engagement in naval history. The Japanese fleet sailing toward him carried admirals who believed they were about to break through American lines and crush the invasion force at Leyte Gulf. They were catastrophically wrong. The problem had been building 4 weeks. General MacArthur's return to the Philippines required massive naval support. Hundreds of transport ships, vulnerable and slow, clustered in Leyte Gulf. Japanese commanders saw an opportunity. Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura assembled a southern strike force, battleships Yamashiro and Fuso, heavy cruiser Mogami, 4 destroyers. Their mission was simple: punch through Surigao Strait at night, reach the transports at dawn, and destroy them. American intelligence detected the plan on October 23rd. Radio intercepts revealed Japanese movements. Search planes spotted Nishimura's force steaming toward the strait. The question wasn't whether an attack was coming. The question was whether Oldendorf could stop it. His resources looked impressive on paper. 6 battleships formed the core: West Virginia, Tennessee, California, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi. 8 cruisers provided additional firepower. 28 destroyers and 39 PT boats completed the force. But numbers meant nothing without position, and position meant everything in naval warfare. Oldendorf faced a tactical puzzle that had stumped naval commanders for centuries. Surigao Strait was 25 miles long, just 15 miles wide at its narrowest point. Islands dotted both sides. Japanese ships would have to sail north through this confined space. They'd be channeled, predictable, but they'd also be desperate and dangerous. Nishimura commanded 2 battleships, armed with 14-inch guns. One lucky salvo could cripple an American cruiser or destroyer. The solution crystallized in Oldendorf's mind around 1800 hours. He would execute a crossing the T, a classic naval maneuver rarely achieved in actual combat. His battleships would form a line across the northern exit of the strait. Japanese ships sailing north would face the full broadside of 6 battleships simultaneously, while only their forward guns could return fire. It was geometrically perfect. It was also incredibly difficult to coordinate in darkness. Lieutenant Commander Robert Hagen, 34, from Portland, Maine, commanded destroyer McDermott on the western flank. His orders arrived at 1830 hours. Take position 8 miles south of the battle line. Wait for Japanese ships to pass. Then attack from behind with torpedoes. It sounded straightforward until Hagen studied the details. The strait would be pitch black, no moon, overcast sky. Radar would guide them, but radar in 1944 showed only rough positions, not precise identities. How would they distinguish friend from enemy in the chaos? How would they avoid firing on each other? The risk of friendly fire was enormous. Commander Joshua Cooper, 41, from Baltimore, led PT Boat Squadron 7 further south. His 15 boats would form the first line of defense. Their job was harassment, dash in, fire torpedoes, race away, draw Japanese attention, disrupt their formation. Cooper knew the odds. PT boats were 80-foot wooden hulls. Japanese destroyers were 400-foot steel warships with 5-inch guns. One hit would obliterate a PT boat. At 2,000 hours, all units reported ready. Oldendorf's battle line stretched 6 miles across the northern strait. West Virginia anchored the center. Tennessee and California flanked left and right. Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi filled the gaps. Each battleship had been modified after Pearl Harbor with new radar systems. Fire control computers calculated range, bearing, and shell trajectory automatically. Crews could fire accurately at targets they couldn't see. Captain Herbert Mast, 45, from Omaha, commanded West Virginia's gunnery department. His 16-inch guns could hurl 2,700-pound shells, 24 miles. But distance wasn't the challenge tonight. The challenge was timing. Fire too early, and shells would miss. Wait too long, and Japanese ships would close to point-blank range, where their torpedoes became deadly. The Japanese force entered the southern strait at 21:15 hours. PT boats spotted them first. Lieutenant John McElfresh, 26, from Tampa, commanded PT 137. He was 3 miles south of Panay Island when radar showed large contacts approaching. He keyed his radio. Multiple heavy units, bearing north, speed 20 knots. Cooper ordered the attack. 15 PT boats roared toward the Japanese formation. Their engines screamed at 40 knots. Spray drenched the crews. At 2,000 yards, they launched torpedoes, 45 weapons churning toward the enemy. Then they turned hard and fled. Japanese destroyers responded immediately. Searchlights stabbed the darkness. 5-inch guns opened fire. Shells bracketed PT-137. One round hit the water 30 feet to port, showering McElfresh with shrapnel. He felt warm blood on his face, but kept his hand on the throttle. 2 more shells screamed past. His boat reached 43 knots, spray flying 20 feet high. The torpedo attack failed. Japanese lookouts spotted the wakes. Destroyers turned sharply. All 45 torpedoes missed, but the attack accomplished its goal. Nishimura now knew American forces were waiting. He pressed forward anyway. His orders were explicit: reach Leyte Gulf by dawn. Nothing else mattered. At 2300 hours, Nishimura's force passed Panay Island. Destroyer Shigur led the formation. Battleships Yamashiro and Fuso followed 2,000 yards behind. Heavy cruiser Mogami and 3 more destroyers trailed. They sailed in column, each ship following the wake of the one ahead. It was a formation designed for speed, not defense. American destroyers waited in 2 groups. Commander Cooper's Western Group held position near Leyte Island. Commander R.H. Phillips commanded the Eastern Group near Dinagat Island. Both groups had orders to attack simultaneously from opposite sides. The Japanese column would face torpedoes from both flanks at once. The numbers seemed impossible. 47 American destroyers would launch 286 torpedoes in a coordinated attack, but Oldendorf had confirmed every detail through 3 days of planning. What happened next would prove whether peacetime training could translate to combat effectiveness. How many torpedoes would find targets? Could destroyers survive the counterattack? Phillips struck first. At 23:01 hours, his Eastern Group raced toward the Japanese column. Range closed to 8,000 yards. Torpedo tubes swung outboard. Fire control solutions updated continuously. At 6,000 yards, 5 destroyers launched 47 torpedoes. The weapons accelerated to 45 knots, leaving phosphorescent trails in the black water. Japanese lookouts never saw them coming. Destroyer Yamagumo, sailing 4th in column, took 3 hits within 10 seconds. Explosions ripped through her engine room. She lost power immediately and began listing. Destroyer Michishio, 2nd in line, absorbed 2 torpedoes amidships. Her back broke. Both halves sank within 4 minutes. Nishimura's formation shattered. Ships turned independently, trying to avoid the torpedo tracks. Mogami swung left. Asagumo turned right. Battleship Fuso maintained course, her captain refusing to break formation. It was the wrong decision. 2 torpedoes struck Fuso's stern at 23:08 hours. Secondary magazines exploded. Fire engulfed the aft superstructure. Cooper's Western Group attacked at 23:15 hours. 9 destroyers launched 52 torpedoes from 7,000 yards. They targeted Yamashiro, Nishimura's flagship. The battleship's lookouts finally spotted torpedo wakes. Her captain ordered hard right rudder. The massive ship began turning, too slowly. One torpedo hit forward. Another struck amidships. A third penetrated the starboard side, near the bridge. Yamashiro staggered but didn't stop. Her engines kept running. Damage control teams sealed flooded compartments. Nishimura radioed Vice Admiral Kiyohide Shima, commanding a second Japanese force behind him. Under destroyer attack, proceeding north as planned. His determination was absolute. His awareness of the situation was fatally incomplete. Oldendorf's strategy depended on a technology most naval officers barely understood in 1944. Radar fire control had transformed battleship gunnery from an art into a science. Lieutenant James Watkins, 29, from Chicago, operated West Virginia's Mark 8 fire control radar. His screen showed Japanese ships as bright green blips moving north at 18 knots. Range, 39,000 yards. Too far for accurate fire. He waited. The system worked through electromagnetic pulses. Radar transmitted radio waves. When waves hit a solid object, they bounced back. Receivers measured the time delay. Computers calculated distance. Fire control radar did this 2,400 times per minute, updating target position continuously. Human gunners could never track moving targets this precisely. Before radar, battleship duels relied on visual observation. Spotters in the mast tops watched for shell splashes. They radioed corrections, 200 yards over, 50 yards left. Gunners adjusted aim and fired again. The process took minutes. Hit percentages averaged 5%. Radar changed everything. Computers adjusted aim automatically between shots. Hit percentages jumped to 25%. Watkins had trained on this system for 8 months. West Virginia had been completely rebuilt after Pearl Harbor. Old mechanical fire control systems were ripped out. New Mark 8 radar and Ford Mark 1A computers were installed. The computer weighed 3 tons and filled a room below decks. It contained 2,000 vacuum tubes, 400 relays, and 150 electric motors. When functioning properly, it could calculate firing solutions faster than 20 human mathematicians. The computer integrated multiple data streams. Radar provided target range and bearing. Gyro compasses measured the ship's heading and roll. Wind sensors gauged airspeed and direction. Temperature gauges tracked barrel heat, which affected shell velocity. The computer processed all variables simultaneously and adjusted gun elevation and training angles every 2 seconds. Captain Mast received firing authorization at 2,350 hours. His radar operators had tracked Yamashiro for 15 minutes. Range had dropped to 26,000 yards. The computer showed a 68% probability of hitting with the first salvo. Mast gave the order, "Commence firing." West Virginia's 8 16-inch guns elevated to 19 degrees. Turrets rotated 3 degrees right. At 2,352 hours, all 8 guns fired simultaneously. The blast was overwhelming. Flame erupted 60 feet from each barrel. The ship lurched sideways from recoil, shells weighing 2,700 pounds. Each accelerated to 2,500 feet per second in the first 20 feet of barrel travel. Watkins watched his radar. The computer predicted shell arrival in 53 seconds. He counted down silently. At 51 seconds, his screen showed new contacts near Yamashiro. Shell splashes. At 52 seconds, Yamashiro's radar signature changed shape. 1 shell had hit. 5 other battleships opened fire within the next 2 minutes. Tennessee's 14-inch guns boomed at Shiro 2,353 hours. California followed at 2,354. Maryland and Pennsylvania joined at 2,355. Mississippi fired last at 2,356. The sky lit up with muzzle flashes. Sound became physical pressure. Crews wore double hearing protection and still felt their skulls rattle. Japanese sailors aboard Yamashiro experienced something unprecedented in naval warfare. Shells arrived from an enemy they couldn't see. No muzzle flashes marked the American position. No visible ships provided targets for return fire. Shells simply materialized out of darkness, screaming down at terminal velocity. Each projectile hit with kinetic energy equivalent to 150 pounds of TNT. The first hit penetrated Yamashiro's forward superstructure. It passed through 3 decks before exploding in the crew berthing space. 40 men died instantly. The second hit struck amidships, destroying a secondary gun mount. The third hit was catastrophic. A 16-inch shell from West Virginia penetrated the armored deck and exploded in the forward magazine. The blast lifted the entire bow 15 feet out of the water. Nishimura tried to return fire. Yamashiro's forward 14-inch turret trained toward the American flashes on the northern horizon. Range was estimated at 20,000 yards. The turret fired 4 shells at 2,358 hours, all missed by over 2,000 yards. Japanese rangefinders couldn't establish accurate distance in darkness. Their shells fell harmlessly into the sea. Could Nishimura have withdrawn? His tactical situation was hopeless, but his radio still functioned. One transmission to Combined Fleet Headquarters would have confirmed the disaster. Japanese commanders could have canceled the entire operation. Instead, Nishimura maintained radio silence. His last message, sent at 0005 hours. October 25th, read only, advancing north. American cruisers joined the bombardment at midnight. Louisville, Portland, Minneapolis, Denver, Columbia, Phoenix, Boise, and Shropshire opened fire with 6-inch and 8-inch guns. They didn't have radar fire control as sophisticated as the battleships, but they had volume. 32 guns fired as fast as crews could load. Shells rained on Yamashiro at a rate of 4 per second. The engagement became methodical. West Virginia fired 93 rounds in 18 minutes. Her crew worked with mechanical precision. Powder bags loaded, shells rammed, breeches closed, guns fired. The cycle repeated every 35 seconds. Hot brass casings piled on the deck. The smell of cordite became overpowering. Crews breathed through wet cloth. Yamashiro absorbed punishment that would have sunk most warships twice. Her armor belt was 9 inches thick. Deck armor measured 8 inches. This protection deflected many hits, but 16-inch shells punched through eventually. By 0010 hours, Yamashiro had taken 12 major caliber hits. Fires raged from bow to stern. Her speed dropped to 8 knots. Battleship Fuso, hit earlier by torpedoes, broke apart at 0008 hours. Her forward magazine exploded. The detonation was visible 20 miles away. Survivors reported seeing the ship literally split in half. The bow section sank immediately. The stern remained afloat, burning, for another 12 minutes before sliding under. Heavy cruiser Mogami turned south at 0012 hours. Her captain had seen enough. Both Japanese battleships were destroyed or dying. 3 destroyers were sunk. Only Mogami and destroyer Shigure remained combat effective. The captain ordered full retreat. Mogami accelerated to 28 knots, smoke pouring from her stacks as engineers pushed the engines beyond rated limits. Destroyer Asagumo tried to follow but ran into American destroyer fire. 5-inch shells ripped through her thin armor. One hit destroyed the bridge, killing the captain and all senior officers. Another penetrated the forward magazine. Asagumo exploded at 0021 hours. There were no survivors. Yamashiro's end came at 0019 hours. She had absorbed 14 hits from 14-inch shells and 16 hits from 16-inch shells. Fires reached the aft magazine. The explosion tore off everything behind the second smokestack. The forward section rolled left, then right, then capsized. She sank stern first. Of 1,936 men aboard, only 10 survived. Admiral Nishimura went down with his ship. Survivors later reported seeing him on the bridge as Yamashiro rolled. He made no attempt to escape. Japanese naval tradition demanded commanders share their ship's fate. Nishimura had failed his mission. Death was the only honorable outcome. Shigure, the lone surviving destroyer, fled south at maximum speed. Her captain, Lieutenant Commander Tamechi Hara, was one of Japan's most experienced destroyer officers. He'd fought at Coral Sea, Midway, and Guadalcanal. He recognized a massacre when he saw one. His radio report to Japanese command was blunt. All ships except Shigure sunk, proceeding to base. The timing was brutal. 18 minutes from first battleship salvo to Yamashiro's sinking. The enemy source documented the moment. American radio intercepts recorded Japanese transmissions. At 004 hours, Yamashiro radioed, "Under heavy fire. Steering lost." At 0011 hours, "Flooding cannot be controlled." At 0019 hours, "Abandoning." The transmission cut off mid-word. What Nishimura's force couldn't solve was the mathematics of the situation. 6 battleships, firing every 35 seconds, generated 1,028 large-caliber shells per hour. Even with 75% missing, that meant 257 hits per hour. Yamashiro absorbed 30 hits in 18 minutes. The ship was built to survive 10. The problem? American technology had exceeded Japanese defensive design by a factor of 3. The battle wasn't over. Vice Admiral Kiyohide Shima commanded a second Japanese force approaching from the south. His force was smaller: heavy cruisers Nachi and Ashigara, light cruiser Abukuma, 4 destroyers. Shima had received Nishimura's distress signals, but pressed forward. His orders from combined fleet were explicit: breakthrough to Leyte Gulf, regardless of cost. Shima's first warning came at 025 hours. His lookouts spotted wreckage floating in the strait, shattered lifeboats, oil slicks, bodies. Then they saw something shocking: the stern section of battleship Fuso, still afloat and burning. The massive hulk drifted sideways across the channel. Shima ordered course change to port to avoid collision. The maneuver saved Nachi from hitting Fuso's wreck. It also placed Shima's force directly in the path of retreating cruiser Mogami. Mogami was steaming south at 28 knots, trailing smoke and flames. Her captain never saw Nachi until collision was inevitable. The cruiser struck at 0030 hours. Mogami's bow crumpled. Nachi's port side buckled inward. Both ships lost forward momentum. Commander Kokichi Mori, 38 from Yokosuka, commanded Nachi's damage control teams. His assessment was immediate and grim. The collision had opened hull plates below the waterline. Pumps couldn't keep pace with flooding. Nachi was taking on 40 tons of water per minute. Speed dropped to 18 knots. Would she even make it out of the strait? American PT boats attacked Shima's formation at 0040 hours. Lieutenant Harley Thronson, 27 from Seattle, commanded PT-323. His radar showed Japanese cruisers stopped in the water. He closed to 1,500 yards and launched 4 torpedoes. All missed, passing ahead of Nachi by 200 yards. Japanese destroyers counterattacked with gunfire. Shells walked toward PT-323. Thronson pushed throttles to maximum and escaped into darkness. Shima made his decision at 45 hours. Nishimura's entire force was destroyed. His own flagship was damaged. American battleships controlled the northern exit. The mission was impossible. He ordered full retreat. His force turned south and fled at best speed. The decision likely saved Shima's life. Oldendorf's battle line was still in position, guns loaded, crews alert. Radar operators tracked Shima's retreat. If Japanese ships had continued north, they would have faced the same coordinated fire that destroyed Yamashiro. But Oldendorf didn't pursue. His mission was defensive: protect the transports in Leyte Gulf. With the Japanese force retreating, that mission was accomplished. American destroyers weren't finished. Commander Richard Pratt, 39, from San Francisco, led a group of 5 destroyers in pursuit of damaged Mogami. His radar tracked the cruiser limping south at 14 knots. At 01:15 hours, his destroyers closed to 12,000 yards and opened fire with 5-inch guns. Mogami's situation became desperate. Her forward turrets were destroyed in the collision with Nachi. Only her aft guns could return fire. Shell splashes bracketed the American destroyers, but hits were rare. Japanese fire control relied on optical range finding. In pitch darkness, Accuracy was impossible. The pursuit continued for 30 minutes. American destroyers fired 634 5-inch shells. At least 47 hit Mogami. Fires spread to the bridge. The captain ordered abandoned ship at 0147 hours, but many crew refused. They believed they could save the vessel. Engineering crews kept the engines running. Damage control parties fought the fires. Mogami maintained course toward the Philippines, trailing a 12-mile oil slick. Dawn brought a new threat. American carrier aircraft launched at first light. Lieutenant Commander Robert Price, 33 from Dallas, led a strike group of 12 Avenger torpedo bombers. They found Mogami at 0630 hours, barely moving down by the bow. Price's bombers attacked from 2,000 feet. 6 torpedoes hit. Mogami finally rolled over and sank at 0707 hours. Of 850 crew, 191 survived. Destroyer Asagumo met a similar fate. Damaged during the night battle, she had retreated south with Shima's force, but her damage was severe. Speed dropped to 10 knots by dawn. Lieutenant James Sweat, 26 from San Francisco, led a flight of 6 Hellcat fighters. They found Asagumo at 7:15 hours. Rockets and bombs finished what destroyer guns had started. Asagumo sank at 0743 hours. The scale of the disaster became clear as morning progressed. Japanese search planes photographed the battlefield. Their reports documented the carnage. 2 battleships sunk. 1 heavy cruiser sunk. 4 destroyers sunk. 1 heavy cruiser heavily damaged. Total Japanese losses: approximately 2,800 killed, 400 wounded, 220 captured. American losses stood in stark contrast. No ships sunk. Destroyer Albert Grant damaged by friendly fire during the night battle. 6 men killed, 30 wounded. PT boat PT-493 destroyed by Japanese gunfire. 3 killed. Total American losses: 39 killed, 114 wounded. The battle demonstrated the value of preparation. Oldendorf had spent 3 days positioning his forces. Every destroyer captain knew exactly where to be and when to attack. Every battleship crew had practiced radar fire control until operation was instinctive. Coordination was perfect because it had been rehearsed endlessly. Technology made the difference in execution. Without radar, Oldendorf's battle line couldn't have engaged targets in darkness. Without fire control computers, battleship accuracy would have been 80% lower. Without radio coordination, destroyer attacks would have been piecemeal and less effective. The combination of training and technology created overwhelming tactical advantage. Japanese commanders learned a harsh lesson. Night attacks through confined waters had worked in 1942 when both sides fought with visual gunnery. By 1944, American technological superiority rendered such tactics suicidal. But lessons learned too late offer no comfort. How many more Japanese sailors would die before their admirals accepted the reality of American naval dominance? Shima's force reached Brunei Bay on October 27th. Nachi survived but required 6 months of repairs. Ashigara and the 4 destroyers were undamaged but demoralized. Crews spread word of the disaster. Other Japanese units heard the stories. Battleships sunk without firing. An effective shot. Cruisers destroyed by invisible enemies. Destroyers obliterated in minutes. The psychological impact rippled through the Imperial Japanese Navy. Captains questioned orders that required sailing into obvious traps. Crews wondered if their sacrifice served any purpose. Morale, already fragile, after defeats at Midway and the Philippine Sea, cracked further. Sailors began writing final letters home before missions, convinced they wouldn't return. American crews celebrated cautiously. They'd won a decisive victory, but the war was far from over. Captain Mast addressed West Virginia's crew at 800 hours, October 25th. His message was brief. "Well done. Remain alert. More battles ahead." The crew understood. Kamikazes were already striking American ships off Leyte. The Philippines campaign would last months. Victory at Surigao Strait was one step toward Tokyo, not the final destination. Oldendorf filed his after-action report on October 28th. His conclusion was clinical. Enemy force destroyed through coordinated application of superior technology and tactical position. Casualties minimal due to enemy inability to respond effectively to radar-directed fire. The report didn't mention that this was the culmination of 3 years of rebuilding after Pearl Harbor. It didn't discuss the psychological satisfaction of using restored battleships to destroy Japanese warships. Those elements were unstated but universally understood among survivors of December 7, 1941. Commander Hara guided Shigure south at 32 knots, the lone survivor of Nishimura's force. Behind him, oil fires illuminated Surigao Strait like a distant sunset. His radio crackled with distress calls from sinking ships. Each transmission cut off mid-sentence as vessels slipped beneath the waves. Hara ordered radio silence. Nothing he said could help those men now. At 0130 hours, Hara's lookouts spotted debris fields, shattered wood, twisted metal, life jackets floating empty. These were the remains of destroyer Michishio, sunk 3 hours earlier by American torpedoes. Hara reduced speed to 15 knots and ordered searchlights activated. His crew might find survivors. The lights revealed horror. Bodies floated everywhere. Some men clung to wreckage, waving frantically. Others floated face down, already dead. Oil covered the water, thick and black. Hara counted 47 men alive. His destroyer could take perhaps 30 without compromising combat effectiveness. Could he leave 17 men to die? He made the decision in seconds. Shigure stopped. Cargo nets went over the side. Sailors pulled survivors aboard. The process took 9 minutes. At 139 hours, Shigure resumed course south. Behind them, 17 men still floated in the oil. Hara heard their screams fade as distance increased. The sound would haunt him for decades. Dawn found Shigure 60 miles south of the strait. Hara's crew worked frantically to treat wounded survivors. Most had burns covering 30 to 40% of their bodies. The ship's medic, Petty Officer Takeo Sato, 24 from Osaka, had supplies for perhaps 10 casualties. He improvised. Cooking oil became burn ointment. Bedsheets became bandages. 3 men died despite his efforts. At 700 hours, American carrier planes found Shigure. 8 Hellcat fighters dove from 8,000 feet. Hara ordered maximum speed and began evasive maneuvers. Shigure turned hard left, then right, then left again. Rockets screamed past, missing by meters. Machine gun bullets stitched the water. One round penetrated the forward deck, killing a sailor. Then the Hellcats broke off, low on fuel. Hara reached Brunei Bay at 1640 hours. October 25th, his report to Naval Headquarters was devastating. He didn't soften the details. 2 battleships sunk, 3 destroyers sunk, 1 cruiser heavily damaged, estimated 2,500 men killed. American losses, minimal. The battle had been a massacre. Vice Admiral Shima's force arrived 2 hours later. Nachi was down by the bow, her collision damage worse than initially assessed. Pumps ran continuously. Engineers reported the flooding was contained but not stopped. The cruiser would need dry dock repairs lasting months. Shima's tactical reputation was destroyed, along with Nishimura's fleet. Far north in Leyte Gulf, the American invasion fleet continued landing troops. General MacArthur waited ashore at 1300 hours October 25th, cameras recording his return to the Philippines. He had no idea how close the Japanese had come to disrupting everything. If Nishimura's battleships had broken through, they would have reached the transport area at dawn. Unarmored transports packed with soldiers would have been helpless targets. Captain Mast supervised damage assessment aboard West Virginia. Her guns had fired 93 rounds of 16-inch ammunition. Barrel wear was within acceptable limits. Fire control systems had performed flawlessly. Casualties, 0. The only significant issue was ammunition expenditure. The ship had 80 rounds remaining. Resupply would be needed before the next engagement. Under the waterline, West Virginia showed her scars from Pearl Harbor. Patches covered torpedo damage. Welded plates marked where hull breaches had been repaired. The ship was a testament to American industrial capacity. In 1941, she'd been written off as a total loss. By 1944, she was the most technologically advanced battleship in the world. How many other nations could achieve such recovery? Lieutenant Watkins examined his radar equipment. The Mark 8 had tracked targets continuously for 4 hours. No breakdowns, no false readings. The system had proven itself in combat. His report would influence radar development for decades. Future fire control systems would build on lessons learned this night. Destroyer McDermott returned to base at 1100 hours. Commander Hagen's crew was exhausted. They'd launched 20 torpedoes, dodged return fire, and survived without casualties. But Hagen knew they'd been lucky. Japanese destroyers had been distracted by PT boat attacks. In a direct engagement, McDermott's thin armor offered minimal protection. PT boat crews had the most harrowing experience. Lieutenant McElfresh brought PT-137 back at 0800 hours with 14 shell holes in the hull. One engine was damaged. The radio was destroyed. 3 crew members had minor shrapnel wounds. McElfresh himself had 23 pieces of metal embedded in his arms and face. He refused medical evacuation. His boat could still fight. He'd repair and return to duty. The battle's strategic impact extended far beyond Surigao Strait. Japanese naval headquarters in Tokyo received Shima's report at 0900 hours, October 26. The news stunned senior officers. 2 battleships lost for no strategic gain. The southern approach to Leyte Gulf was firmly blocked. The entire operation had failed. Admiral Soemu Toyota, commander of Combined Fleet, faced a critical decision. The Battle of Leyte Gulf involved 4 separate engagements across 100,000 square miles of ocean. Surigao Strait was just one component, but it was the component that failed most completely. Should he continue operations knowing one prong of his attack had been destroyed? Toyota chose to press forward. The central force, commanded by Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita, was still intact. Kurita's battleships, including the super battleship Yamato, could still reach Leyte Gulf through San Bernardino Strait. Nishimura's sacrifice might not be in vain if Kurita succeeded. This decision led to the battle off Samar on October 25th. Kurita's force did break through. His battleships encountered only escort carriers and destroyers. For 2 hours, American forces faced annihilation. Then Kurita withdrew, believing he faced fleet carriers. The decision saved American forces, but doomed Japan's last chance at Leyte Gulf. Back in Surigao Strait, recovery operations continued for days. American salvage teams searched for Japanese survivors. They found 127 men clinging to debris on October 26th. Another 93 were rescued on October 27th. Most were from Yamashiro and Fuso. Their stories provided intelligence about Japanese damage control procedures and crew training. Ensign Thomas Gardner, 23, from Boston, interviewed survivors aboard rescue ship Comfort. The Japanese sailors were shocked by American treatment. They expected execution. Instead, they received medical care, food, and dry clothing. Many asked why Americans showed mercy. Gardner had no answer that satisfied them. The captured sailors revealed technical details about Yamashiro's final minutes. Fire control had been destroyed early in the engagement. Manual steering was implemented after the 4th hit. Engine room flooding reached critical levels by 0015 hours. The captain ordered abandon ship at 0017 hours, but most crew stations never received the order. When the magazine exploded at 0019 hours, over 1,000 men were still below decks. These accounts helped American intelligence understand Japanese warship vulnerabilities. Damage control procedures were inadequate. Watertight integrity was compromised by poor hatch design. Fire suppression systems were primitive. The information would guide targeting decisions in future battles. For the men who fought at Surigao Strait, life slowly returned to routine. West Virginia underwent minor repairs and was back on the firing line by November 1st. She would participate in every major amphibious landing from Leyte to Okinawa. Her crew would fire thousands more rounds, sink dozens of smaller vessels, and survive 4 kamikaze attacks. Destroyer McDermott continued escort duties through 1945. Commander Hagen would earn 2 Navy Crosses before war's end. His ship survived and was decommissioned in 1946. She was scrapped in 1947, her service complete. PT boat PT-137 was damaged beyond repair in a November engagement. Lieutenant McElfresh transferred to PT-194 and continued combat operations. He survived the war and returned to Tampa, where he never spoke publicly about his experiences. The memories were too painful. Commander Hara became one of the few Japanese destroyer captains to survive the entire war. He wrote extensively about his experiences in the 1950s and 60s. His account of Surigao Strait emphasized the futility of sailing into radar-directed fire without equivalent technology. His conclusion was bitter. We fought as samurai in an age of machines. Courage meant nothing against computers. Would tactical brilliance have changed the outcome? Probably not. Even if Nishimura had achieved surprise, even if his torpedoes had hit multiple American ships, the mathematical advantage was insurmountable. 6 battleships with radar fire control could engage targets faster than any visual fire control system could respond. Technology had created a gap that tactics couldn't bridge. During the 4-hour battle, American forces sank 2 battleships, 1 heavy cruiser and 4 destroyers. This represented the complete destruction of Nishimura's force, except for 1 destroyer. Japanese casualties totaled 2,800 killed and 400 wounded. American losses were 39 killed and 114 wounded, a kill ratio of 71 to 1. No naval battle in history had produced such lopsided results. The engagement validated radar fire control beyond any doubt. What radar technology achieved at Surigao Strait would reshape naval doctrine for the next 80 years. Before October 25, 1944, some admirals questioned whether computers could replace human judgment in combat. After Surigao Strait, the question became irrelevant. West Virginia alone achieved more hits in 18 minutes than entire fleets managed in hours-long engagements during World War I. The tactical innovations extended beyond radar. Oldendorf's crossing the T maneuver was the last successful execution of this classic naval formation. Future battles would be fought at ranges where visual formations became meaningless. Ships would engage enemies 30 miles away, guided entirely by electronics. Surigao Strait marked the transition from age-of-sail tactics to missile-age warfare. The battle's immediate impact was operational. With the southern approach blocked, Japanese forces couldn't reinforce their Philippines garrison. MacArthur's invasion proceeded on schedule. Within 3 months, Manila fell. Within 6 months, Japanese forces in the Philippines were destroyed or isolated. The recapture of the Philippines cut Japan's supply lines to Southeast Asia. Oil, rubber, and raw materials stopped flowing north. Japanese industry began starving. Strategically, Surigao Strait demonstrated that Japan had lost the Pacific War. The Imperial Navy couldn't protect its merchant fleet. It couldn't challenge American naval dominance. It couldn't even execute suicide missions successfully. After October 1944, Japanese naval operations became increasingly desperate. Kamikaze attacks, human torpedoes, suicide boats. Conventional naval power was finished. The psychological effects were profound and lasting. Japanese naval officers who survived the war wrote extensively about technological inferiority. Their accounts emphasized American radar, fire control computers, and damage control procedures. These officers recognized that Japan had entered World War II with 1920s technology and faced 1940s opponents. The gap proved fatal. American lessons were different. Naval planners studied Surigao Strait to understand coordination requirements. The battle involved 89 ships executing complex maneuvers in darkness. Not a single friendly fire incident occurred among major units. This level of coordination required standardized procedures, extensive training, and reliable communications. Future naval doctrine incorporated these requirements. Radar technology advanced rapidly after 1944. West Virginia's Mark 8 system, cutting edge in October, was obsolete by 1946. Newer radars had longer range, better resolution, and faster processing. By 1950, fire control systems could track 20 targets simultaneously. By 1960, computers could engage multiple targets automatically. The revolution that began at Surigao Strait continued through the Cold War and beyond. Modern warships carry direct descendants of the systems used in 1944. Aegis combat systems on current destroyers use phased array radar and computer fire control. The principles are identical: detect the target, calculate the solution, guide the weapon. The execution is simply faster and more accurate. A modern destroyer can engage 100 targets simultaneously. Oldendorf would recognize the concept even if the hardware seems magical. The 6 battleships that fought at Surigao Strait had varied post-war careers. West Virginia participated in the Okinawa campaign and was present in Tokyo Bay for the Japanese surrender. She was decommissioned in 1947 and scrapped in 1959. Tennessee followed a similar path, serving through 1947 before being scrapped in 1959. California was decommissioned in 1947 and scrapped in 1960. Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi all survived the war. Maryland was decommissioned in 1947 and scrapped in 1959. Pennsylvania suffered kamikaze damage at Okinawa but survived. She was used as a target ship for atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll in 1946. Mississippi continued service until 1956, the last battleship of the Surigao Strait Force to remain in commission. Rear Admiral Oldendorf continued commanding naval forces through the Philippines campaign. He received the Navy Cross for his performance at Surigao Strait. After the war, he served in various staff positions before retiring in 1948 as a vice admiral. He died in 1974 at age 87. His obituary in Navy Times focused almost entirely on the night of October 24, 1944. That battle defined his career. Individual crew members scattered after the war. Most returned to civilian life. Lieutenant Watkins became an electrical engineer and worked on radar systems for the Navy until 1970. Captain Mast commanded a cruiser division during the Korean War before retiring in 1954. Commander Hagen taught at the Naval Academy from 1947 to 1952, training a new generation of destroyer officers. The Japanese survivors faced different futures. Those captured at Surigao Strait spent the remainder of the war in POW camps in Hawaii and California. Most returned to Japan in 1946 to find their country devastated. Few spoke about their experiences. Japanese society viewed captured soldiers as failures, regardless of circumstances. Many survivors changed their names to escape stigma. Commander Hara wrote the most extensive account. His book, published in 1961, became required reading at the Japanese Naval Academy. Current Japanese naval officers study Surigao Strait as an example of technological inferiority leading to tactical disaster. The lesson has shaped Japanese naval development for 80 years. Modern Japanese destroyers carry some of the most advanced radar systems in any navy. Could any outcome have changed history's course? Probably not. Even if Nishimura had broken through, even if Japanese battleships had reached the transports, the strategic situation wouldn't have changed. American industrial capacity was producing ships faster than Japan could sink them. Radar technology was widening the capability gap daily. Japan's defeat was inevitable by October 1944. Surigao Strait simply demonstrated how complete that defeat would be. The strait itself remains largely unchanged. Fishermen work the same waters where battleships once fought. Occasionally, nets snag on underwater debris, a gun barrel, a section of hull, a ship's bell. These artifacts rest in 300 feet of water. Yamashiro and Fuso remain in their graves. Philippine law protects them as war memorials. Divers are prohibited from disturbing the wrecks. In 2019, a research expedition located Yamashiro's wreck. Sonar imaging showed the battleship resting upright. Her superstructure collapsed. The forward section, where the magazine exploded, is a crater of twisted metal. The aft section is remarkably intact. Fish shelter in gun turrets. Coral grows on steel. The ocean has claimed what fire and explosive could not fully destroy. October 24th remains a solemn date in the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. Memorial services honor those lost at Surigao Strait. Survivors, now in their late 90s, attend when health permits. They speak of shipmates who never made it home. They remember the night the ocean burned and steel ships vanished beneath dark water. Would anyone remember them if the story wasn't told? The last battleship engagement ended before dawn on October 25, 1944. No such battle has occurred since. Naval warfare moved to carrier aviation, submarines, and guided missiles. The age of big gun duels died in Surigao Strait, killed by radar pulses and computer calculations. Technology transformed warfare that night, and the transformation proved permanent.